All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica Pruce. I am a librarian for Harper Library, and I am here to teach you guys about different strategies to research through the library, particularly how to use our academic databases. But we're also going to go through some topics such as what types of sources there are out there and ways to narrow your topic if you still kind of have a general source and you're still developing your research question. So, my goals after this session are for you guys to think of, have different ways to narrow and focus on a research topic if you need to. And then of course, know how to find scholarly and other types of sources through the library databases and different tools that are useful for your research, such as saving your sources for later reference and citation. Citation can be a little confusing, but there are ways to go about it that makes it easier for you guys to then not make that such a hurdle, because I want your experience when you're researching to be about finding sources, thinking about it, and then of course your own writing on it, right? So before I send students to the library and say, hey, yeah, go find sources, I like us to think about the different types of sources that we're interacting with. So especially when we research through everything digitally, everything can look like just text on a screen, which makes it all look the same, right? But regardless of where you get your research from, whether it's through the library or elsewhere, I want you to just in the back of your head, think of what types of sources are you interacting with. Is it a ebook? Is it a scholarly journal or academic article? That's what I'm going to show you how to search through the library databases today. There are things like trade publication articles that of course tells you how to reference and do a certain trade out there. And then there are your more general topic public sources such as magazines and newspapers. These are to inform a general audience about various different topics, and how they go about it is really up to the individual publishers, right? And then there's, of course, the great wide internet. You know, we can go and search whatever we like and see what's out there. But what's inherent with the internet is that it's a wide variety of information, and we have to evaluate everything that we run into carefully. We have to critically evaluate all different types of sources we run into, whether it's a book, whether it's a article, or whether it's a blog on the internet or things like that. But it really helps you focus on your research if you take the time to think of what types of sources do I really want to find out there. Am I looking for articles? Am I looking for newspaper reportings? Things like that. So those are really quickly different types of sources that you can run out there. And then of course, all those different types of sources, depending on what you find, are going to fall into two different categories. What we think of is either scholarly or popular sources, or scholarly or popular articles specifically. And they can present the same information in two different ways. Easy ways to think about whether a source is scholarly or popular is thinking about it via author, source, purpose, audience, vocabulary, and citations. What does that mean? Well, author, scholarly, or sometimes scholarly or academic sources, you can hear it as either one. They mean the same thing. They're always authored by researchers and experts in a certain subject field. For popular articles, they can be authored by journalists, non-experts, and or experts. Again, it's up to the publisher, so they can either include experts or not include experts. It's a little bit of both. The sources themselves, when we're talking about scholarly sources, is going to be up-to-date research academic journals. And popular resources are going to be your general audience news sources. So things like newspapers and popular magazines, blogs, things like that. Purposes are going to be for scholarly or academic articles. It should always be to find current research findings. It's for researchers in a field to publish what they currently know about a subject or what they're currently learning about a subject. For a popular source, again, it's up to the publisher, but in general, the purpose is to generally inform their audience about something. And the audience themselves for a scholarly source is going to be other researchers and scholars, which is you, the student. Every student watching this, and if that's a part of this class or any Harper class, is a scholar. You are part of an academic institution. You're being asked to do scholarly research. So academic articles, if you haven't interacted with them before, they could feel a little intimidating, right? Because they're by researchers for researchers. You could think, well, no, that's not me. But I promise you, as the student, have every right to this research, just like the professionals in this field. It's for you too. So I thank you for being part of Harper. And the audience for a popular article or is the general public. Popular equals for public. That's an easy way that I like to organize it in my brain, right? And the vocabulary is where the separation can really stick out. So you're going to see specialized vocabulary in scholarly or academic sources, while popular sources will be everyday language. What does that mean? So like, for example, say you are a doctor that's been doing a ton of medical research, you have a lot of promising findings, and you want to publish in a medical journal about your findings. You've been working on that really hard. The wording in that article for the medical journal is going to have terminology that is understandable by other doctors, because the author is a medical professional and the audience is fellow other medical professionals to show your research findings. But say that same doctor gets interviewed for a magazine or newspaper or something like that to talk about their findings, they're not going to use doctor terminology because their audience is a general audience. So they're going to use everyday language to talk about the same research, but in a different way. So both sources, whether it's scholarly or popular, they have their pros and cons in that sense, right? And then there's citations. Citations are just a nice big sticker of credibility. You cannot publish in a scholarly or academic article without citations. In a popular source or article, it's great if they have citations, but again, that's up to the publisher, and a lot of them choose not to have it. So it's a good sign if you see them, but it's not a requirement in the popular source field. So it's something to keep an eye out for. Basically, the whole point of citations is to show that you, the researcher, are doing your due diligence and working with other people. Knowledge, research, etc. It's never a solo project. It's always a group project, right? If you're going to learn about something, you're going to learn about it from other people who learned about it from other people who learned about it from other people. How we track that is through citations, is saying, hey, here's the research I did and my personal research that I found out by it. My citations are the people I learned from, right? So now, with that in mind, types of research are types of sources and types of whether it's scholarly or popular sources. Keep all that in the back of your mind. Before we go searching for them, how do we apply that to a search in a database to actually find sources? Well, before that, we're going to need a research question. So if you have a topic in your mind, take your topic and think, what am I trying to answer through this research? Because if you're just trying to generally learn about a subject, you can do what I call kind of surface level research. And that could be something as like going to the wiki page and figuring out like, okay, what is this all about, right? But you'll notice that when you start searching for academic / scholarly sources, they're going to be about very specific niche topics and research within a topic. So you have to think about not just a general topic idea, but what about it you want to answer. And we're going to go through an example right after this. So, and also plan your keywords. If you ever hear the term keywords, that all that means is literally the words that you put into a search bar. Why would we need to care about that? Well, you're dealing with a machine when you're dealing with a database, right? A machine does not know human language. It just knows computations, numbers, and crunching, right? And it just wants to give you what you asked it for. So you can't ask a full research question in a search bar because that's going to have human language in it that it's going to find confusing, and it's going to look for words that are unnecessary. So once you have your research topic in question, you have to think what words around that idea are going to be the most useful to literally put into a search bar so the databases can give me resources that are the most relevant. And again, there are ways to think about that, which we're going to go into next. And ultimately, do several searches. Researching is an organic process. That's not a math equation. There's no such thing as the perfect search, right? It's trying different things so you have different results put in front of your eyes. So maybe in the first way you searched, you found 2 useful sources. Maybe in the second way you searched, you found 3 useful sources. It's trying different things so different options appear in front of you, basically. And when it comes to actually finding academic articles and sources, you have to read strategically. So these are going to be professional expert researchers and things like that. They're going to be long articles, but do not worry. There are ways to kind of smart read through them. And I'll walk you through an example on how to do that. You don't always have to read an article from top to bottom in one in one read and one flow. There are ways that you can cherry pick the most useful information of it. That doesn't mean you don't read the article, you do, but we're going to do smart reading, as I call it. So before I go into an example search, let's say that I just choose a general idea of like climate change. Like, okay, I want to write about climate change, but that in and of itself is a bit too broad of a topic, right? Because if I just search climate change in a database, I'm going to get things all over the place because there are a lot of subcategories about the subject climate change. So, and I might, as a researcher, feel overwhelmed where I'm like, dang it, I thought I picked a really good subject, but now all my results are really confusing. What do I do? If you are at this point, you can take a step back and do something called mind mapping. And I love mind mapping because it's not fancy. It doesn't need to be technical or anything like that. It's just you, yourself, and your notes to get your ideas about a subject so you can really focus what about that subject you really want to find out and research. When you're researching something, you want to answer a question, you want to learn about something. So here are two examples of a climate change mind map. The one to the right is computerized. It's done really neatly, which is super neat. That's totally fine. If that's how you like to do things, totally works. If not, no worries. Just start writing stuff down, like the one to the left over here, right? And where it's just somebody's handwriting and stuff like that. You can mind map on the back of a napkin. If it works, go for it. It's just put your general idea in the center, and then around it, start writing whatever ideas come to your mind and connect them however seems logical to you. And basically, literally any idea you have about the subject, right? And once you get all of those ideas out of your head and onto a paper, and you can look at it and say, okay, here's everything I'm thinking about with this subject. What is my natural interest? What is my natural focus, right? And from there, you can find what specific thing about your subject you want to focus on. And from there, you have a research question. Okay, say I am like from this handwritten one, what if I want to focus on water supply, right? Because I heard, oh, water supply might be an issue if we don't take care of climate change now. Maybe that's curious. I'm going to take the time to research that to see if that's true or not. Things like that. So yeah, mind mapping is a great thing to just get all of your ideas out. It does not need to be fancy. And from there, just follow your research nose and figure out what you're naturally focused and interested in, because then you're going to want to research that. And then of course, so after we decide what we want to research, we have to go find sources. And again, whether we find academic sources / scholarly sources or popular sources, both have their value, absolutely. But regardless, even if you get a source that's academic, peer-reviewed, et cetera, from the library, or you get something from a newspaper article on the internet or something like that, you have to critically think about all information you collide with. It could be kind of confusing because depending on your educational background, sometimes you're taught about research or not, and then you go to college and all of a sudden you're expected to do what's called college level research. What does that even mean? Basically, it means that you're expected to think critically about the sources that you evaluate, find, and research from. And I promise you in so many ways, I'm sure you guys already do. You just might not have the terminology for it or have even thought about the ways that you do critically think about the source that you interact with. To practice that and to always keep that in mind, there's a nice little acronym out there called TRAAP, TRAAP, and it is a practice strategy on how to critically think about sources. So basically, if you find a source related to your research topic and you're like, this looks good, I don't know if it's credible or not, you can run it through these steps. So timeliness, relevance, authority, accuracy, and purpose. If you're able to logically answer all of these, chances are that it can be a credible source, right? If any of these steps seem fuzzy or confusing or kind of questionable, that might be a sign to be like, maybe the source isn't what I thought it was. Maybe I should go try to find an alternative one, right? And so T for timeliness, it's just basically, when was this information published, right? Some sources purposefully hide the timeliness when it was published because they want things like for it to go viral again, for people to assume that it's current, right? Does your topic require current information, or will older sources work as well? Oftentimes, if you're writing or researching about the medical or scientific fields, it is required for publishing that you have current research, because that type of information changes so constantly. But if you're talking about something, if your topic naturally talks about something in a historic context, older resources might work as well, right? If you're trying to answer, how did we get here now? Sources from the past about that subject might be useful clues on how to research and figure that out. And has the information been updated? This is huge. So information is rarely stagnant, right? Rarely stays the same. So if you have sources that openly say, hey, this was updated during this date, this is how it was edited, that's a great sign of credibility. And you see that in popular sources too. You'll see online newspapers and articles with edits at the bottom saying like, hey, this has been updated because of this new information. You know, that kind of openness is a great sign from a source. R is for relevance. That's just saying, hey, out of all the options we have out there, are you picking your best bet? Are you taking the time to really look through everything? So does the information relate logically to your topic and or answer your research question? When faced with many results, as it's going to be natural with researching online, right? Is one source more useful than the other? Or are you in a hurry and you just chose option number 3 from the first page, right? So relevance is all about really taking your time to look through your options and saying, yeah, I read the descriptions, I read the titles, I read the abstracts, and I am really picking the ones that are the most logical to my research, right? Authority is all about who wrote it and who's a part of the information. So what information is provided about the author's credentials? If you have a full name for that author, give them a little Google, look at their background. What information is available about the author's professional or educational background? If someone takes the time to say, hey, I'm an expert in something and I took the time to research and write about it, that information about their background should be readily easy to find, because if you worked really hard to get somewhere, you're going to make that known, right? And if you're hiding that, maybe that's something to wonder about, right? Is the author qualified in the subject area? And authority is a huge subject, right? And it can be more about who exactly just wrote it. It could be about who is included in the information too. So like if people are interviewed, what kind of people are being interviewed in that source and stuff like that. But yeah, feel free to get curious, take that author name, right? That information should be readily available. Accuracy is then all about what is actually in the source. Can the information be verified about other sources, or does it feel a little off the wall in comparison to other sources about the same subject? Where does the information come from, right? Is it a study through an organization or something like that, right? Is there a bibliography or works cited that lists the author's sources? And who does the author's cite, right? So having citations, great sign, but don't just see citations and say, okay, awesome, they cited people, they're good researchers, check it done. Take the time to read who they are, because some websites out there will have citations, but then they'll link to very not as credible sources or more biased sources, or they'll just link to other links to their own site because they want more hits, right? So not all citation lists are the same. So always double check them, and don't just say, hey, works cited is there, good. Think about who they're citing as well, right? And purpose, why does this information exist? So information exists for a variety of reasons out there in this day and age. Hopefully from the sources you find for your research where you're trying to learn about a subject, we want to find sources that inform and teach. We want that to be their purpose, right? But there are a lot of other sources out there that are disguised to inform and teach, but they're actually to sell, entertain, persuade in a very specific way, et cetera, et cetera. There are, we live in the day of the internet where we have been given value to things like page views and likes and this kind of shenanigans. So there's a lot of information that exists out there, and if they just get attention and views and stuff like that, their goal is complete. It might not necessarily be to inform. So you got to think critically about what the purpose is, right? And just, if is the information fact, that's what we're hoping for, right? To sources that inform and teach and show facts and research, or is it opinion or propaganda, right? If you are having trouble answering purpose maybe another source would be a better idea for you. Purpose should be clear. And if you are able to logically answer timeliness, relevance, authority, and accuracy, purpose should be easier to answer. But again, these are just easy, quick pocket critical thinking skills, as I like to say. And if you're ever colliding with a source where you're like, I'm not sure, try to run them through these and see if you could logically answer them. And again, I'm sure you guys do this already with a variety of information that you run into. You just haven't really thought about the skill set that it is. So I encourage you to use these critical thinking skills for your sources that you're going to find for your research project and for just information you run in every day, right? It's useful outside of the school content as well. Alrighty, so we went over very quickly what types of sources are out there, the difference between scholarly and popular sources. Both have their pros and cons for sure. How to critically evaluate sources and ways to possibly narrow a topic if you're still thinking about that. With all of that in mind, we can now search through the library databases and see what kind of fun sources out there we could find. So, do you want to double check? Can we see the Harper Library website right now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so researching through the library, there's basically two different ways to go about it. Oh, let's close our lovely little chat box here. There's basically two different ways to go about it. We have our one search tab right here, and then we have our actual database pages, which two ways to get to it. Research, database, databases. Here we are, also from the home page. If we scroll down under quick links, databases is going to be the very first option. Takes you to the same page. The database page is literally from A to B, all the databases you have available to you through Harper Library. I don't expect any of you guys to be automatically familiar with any of these databases, so don't worry about it. If you're curious as to what database to try for a specific subject, there's two sources you can find out. A, ask your professor. B, ask your librarians. Or C, say you're alone in your room at 2 a.m. doing research. I hope that doesn't happen, but let's say it is. And you're like, I don't know what database to choose. There's a subject tag right here, and you can try to filter by subjects and then choose a database from there. I will say our database site gets very excited and it has this little light yellow box that says best bets that can make it seem like these are the only databases that you should choose. That's not true. When you filter by a subject, any database that shows up is a possible choice. So if one database sounds interesting to you, again, follow your research notes and give it a try, right? So what I'm going to show you today is example of a one search and a database search. So one search, it's the default tab on the library homepage. And what one search is, it's one way to search, not the way to search, is how I like to say it. One search searches the majority of our databases at once. And inherently, because of that, the results are going to be overwhelming. So we have to be smart of how we filter our results to get a pool that is the most logical to our research question. What does that look like? Well, let's say I did a mind map and I'm interested, let's say about climate change, the same mind map that I showed you guys an example before. And but I wasn't just thinking about climate change as like weather effects and things like that. I'm thinking of like how political climate change is nowadays and why is that? Like as a researcher, I'm not sure why that happens. So let me try to figure out why that exists. So focusing on that, I'm going to focus on why climate change denial exists. Why, how does it go about it? Why would people take that perspective? Things like that. So I go climate change. Let's pretend I didn't choose something specific just yet, and I just went climate change, right? I didn't do my mind mapping. I didn't think about it. Let's hit search and see what happens. Oh, and if you aren't signed in, take a moment to do so. There we are. You know you're going to be signed in because your name will be in the upper right here, like mine is. Awesome. So yeah, I just searched climate change, and more of a general topic, right? I have over 1 million results. That's a little crazy, right? That's overwhelming. And I've seen there's a ton of books, but they're all about different things. There's a video. This isn't very helpful to me. And I could go to page 6 and could still feel very overwhelming. This is a sign that I need to focus on a specific element about my topic. So now, let me go back. So now, again, thinking about just the kind of political themes around climate change that we see in this day and age. Say I want to research about climate change denial. Why does it happen? So now I'm adding a new keyword, right? Climate change denial. Notice how I'm not using a sentence, right? I'm not saying, why does climate change denial exist, right? That's not useful to the database. I'm choosing my keywords, climate change denial, and feeding that. So now I still have an overwhelming amount of results, but before, when I just did climate change, it was over 1 million. Now they did climate change denial, a specific element about it. I have over 2,000 results. Still a lot, but way different than 1 million results, right? So that shows how specific, how helpful it is to narrow your topic and figure out a specific element about it that interests you, that you're going to use your researcher nose to follow, and how they can already do a lot of weeding for you as far as what sources are useful for that. So, okay, I'm feeling a little bit better. This is better than just searching about climate change in general. But how do I make this result more relevant to my questions, right? I am going to use the tweak your results menu to the left. If you are not using this menu, you are not using OneSearch to your advantage. So what should I be filtering by? You should be filtering by availability. I'm going to say available online. Peer-reviewed journals, why not? If you haven't heard about peer-reviewed journals before, all that means is that before a professional in a field publishes their research, they send it for peer review, which means other professionals in the field review it and okay it before publishing, or they suggest edits, or they veto it. If they're like, wow, this is really off the wall, this is not ready for publishing, they can say that. And the process should be anonymous between each other. So sometimes you will have research topics that you're asked to do, and your professors will say, hey, you need to find peer-reviewed journals about this topic. This is a filter to make sure that all those results will be peer-reviewed. Open access, that just means we can get to the source right away. And then subject is tempting, but we're going to skip it for now, and I will tell you why later. So save subject for later. So availability, check and done. Now we're going to do resource type. And this is where, remember, I was like, you want to think about what type of sources are out there and what you're looking for. So the library does not just have academic sources, it has popular sources as well. So we can see we have newspaper articles here, magazine articles, reviews, web resources, et cetera, et cetera. Right now, I want to focus on articles and books and book chapters. I like to say, don't shy away from the book option because I clicked view online. These are going to be ebooks available to me electronically. And as a researcher, you don't have to read a book from start to finish. You as a researcher can look through the index of a book and choose the chapter that is most relevant to your research. If a book is exactly about what you're trying to find out and the whole book is useful to you, awesome. But oftentimes when researching, like a specific chapter will be kind of more zoned in on the idea that you're trying to answer. So yeah, don't shy away from a book, because it would be a bummer if you missed a really useful chapter because you were scared to out of the idea of like, oh, just because I chose books, I have to read the whole thing. You don't. You could be choosy through the index. And that's exactly why book chapters is a filtering option too, right? Okay, cool. I like my resource types, sound good. And let me then go to creation date. This is all about timeliness in the trap formula, right? What time range of information is going to be most useful to my research? I'd say climate change is pretty scientific. I'm talking about element of it that's more of a recent conundrum, right? So I'm going to say, I don't know, 2019 to, ooh, fancy number there, 2000, hey, there we go, 2019 to 2024. 5 to 3 years is considered current research in a lot of fields, right? And then language, English, just cause. All right, let's hit apply filters and see what happens. Okay, we're getting somewhere. So we just had another big jump. We went from 2,000 results to 200. Awesome. Okay, this is starting to look like something where I can look through and see what's out there now, right? And basically, so after filtering by availability, resource type, creation date, and language, just because to get a few extra numbers out there. If your pool is still too big and you're still overwhelmed by it, then you can look at subject, because what I see very often is that too many subject tags accidentally get chosen, and then you hit apply, and what happens? You get 0 to like 2 results, and you go, what the heck happened? What are you talking about? That's a sign that you overfiltered, because again, this machine this is a database. It's a computation. It does not know about your subject or what automatically are the best sources related to your subject. It just wants to get you what you ask for to the best of its ability. So I always say, with subjects, if you're going to filter by them, filter like between 1 to 3, hit apply, see if the pool of results are better for you. If it's still too much, you can hit maybe 1 to 2 more, apply, until you get a result batch that you're okay to look at, that you feel comfortable and the titles seem interesting to you and things like that. So that is tweaking your results in a nutshell. But between subject tags, you can start seeing what's through here. And I actually already favored these, which is a spoiler. I will show you guys that later. So let me unclick these. So say you're scrolling through, and now we can kind of decide what looks interesting to us. So it's in such tiny font, but it'll tell you what it is right up here above the title. So this is an article, for example. This is a book, for example, right? Oh, don't worry, not clicking you just yet. And then here's the title. Here's who wrote it, where it was published. So this is from a journal called Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. And I can see from the tags here, it's peer-reviewed and open access. Sounds cool. So if a title is interesting to you, you can click it, and it will take you not to the article or the source itself. It will take you to a page about it. Why? Because you are supposed to look at this to see what subjects it's about, of what descriptions are about of it, to see if it's still relevant to your subject. Because a title could sound perfect, but then you take the time reading it and you're like, wait, this isn't what I was thinking of, right? The way to kind of decide whether it is worth your time to read about a resource is to look at things like the description of a resource. So here it's what's telling you about the article. Never use the description as the article itself. It just describes what the source is about. But use it to decide whether it's still relevant to your subject and whether it's worth reading. So I'm going to say I read this description, go, yeah, this seems like pretty on par with what I'm thinking about, what I'm researching. So let me go ahead and read it. So I'm going to scroll up and look at the view online right here. And you're either going to see one or multiple links here. Doesn't matter which one you click. If there's multiple links, it just means the same resource happens to live on multiple databases that Harper subscribes to. So let's try to access this one by clicking the JSTOR archives link here and see what happens. And voila. So a thing to note, let me try to access the same article on 2 different databases just to show you. It's loading, it's loading. Come on, loading dance. Et voila. Okay, so basically all the databases will have their own website design, so they'll all look a little different, which could be a little confusing. You're like, am I in the right spot, or things like that. They all decide their own website design, but they all have the same functionality. So when you follow the sources to the databases that they live on, one out of 2 things will happen. Either the page itself will be the article. That's the case with these 2 databases. You could just hop to reading. Or if it will be another page about the article, and you'll have to click a button that will either say view full text, view full PDF here, and it will just open up the article in another tab. So the databases, again, will all look a little different, but that will be the functionality of them. Either the page itself will be the article, or you have to click a button that says view full text, view full PDF, and it will open up the article in another tab, or the source in another tab, whether it's like an ebook or something like that. And just to give you guys an idea, if this is your first time seeing an academic or scholarly article, they're lengthy. Oh my goodness, but there are strategies on how to read about it. And a lot of it are just their citations too, right? Because these are people who did a lot of research. So of course, naturally have a lot of citations that they learned from. So do not worry. I will give you guides on reading strategies for it so you can get the most use out of your research for it. Okay, cool. So that was OneSearch in a nutshell. But hey, what if I want to find sources now, but I want to read them later. How do I get back to this? We did a lot of research. We did a lot of searching and filtering to get here, right? Remember how I said I want you to log in beforehand. Before, the reason for that is you can do this. So you notice my articles were highlighted in yellow before. That's because I took the time as an example to favor them, right? And when you hit the little pin here or here on this page, you'll notice that dances off in the corner. What does that mean? That means next time I go to the Harper Library webpage, I can just hit search. I'm not going to even search for anything. It's going to be confused. It's going to say no records found. You didn't search for anything. No problemo. I just want to be logged in. If you're not already logged in, you'll see that yellow bar right here under the search anything bar that will prompt you to log in. And then you'll see your name in the upper right. And here's that little pin icon that says go to my favorites. If you click that, it'll load. Anything that you recently favorite will come right here. So you don't have to search it again, right? I want you guys to easily access the stuff that you find because I don't want the stresses. Where did that article go, right? I understand you guys live busy lives. You got to go to class, go to work, go do other life obligations. And then you're going to come home later in the evening and then you're going to get to your researching. No problemo. Save your stuff so you can get to it later and you don't have to repeat those searches, right? Another way to save it, because that's not the only one. Hang on. Let me make sure I'm clicking the right tabs. There we go. We have this email right here. If you're the type of person that's like, if it's in my inbox, I can find it. Great, email it to yourself. You can even write a little note, right? We have our citation button, which we will look at later. Woohoo! Print it if you want. If you're the type of person that's like, I like to save URLs. I like to put all of my URLs of my research findings in like an Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. Super cool, no problemo. Just do not use the URL bar up here. Because if you notice, see how crazy long this is, and there's a bunch of shenanigans in this URL. That's for a number of reasons. I'm logging into Harper databases remotely. I'm going through specific library links. I did a specific search with specific filters. All those things make this URL crazy and long. If you were to copy and paste this later, it could turn into a broken link. And then you go, oh no, where did my beautiful source go, right? No worries. What you want if you like to save URLs is this icon with a chain link called a permalink. This will take you back to the source page. So let me copy this, open a new tab, paste it in, see what happens. There we go. And I'm back here. So totally okay if you're the type of person that likes to save URLs, just make sure you are saving the permalink and not what's in the URL bar proper. So whether you do that, whether you email it to yourself, whether you like to log in and pin, use whichever speaks to your brain the best. Just make sure you save your stuff so you can get back to it. And okay, so that was one search in a nutshell. Awesome. And let's see an example of, this is a book. Because I see book right here. What does an ebook look like? Let's find out. View online link. We're going to pretend I went down here, I read the description. This looks good to me, right? So ebooks are super awesome when you do view online. You'll have ebook options. And again, it usually takes you to a page about the book first. And you can just either view full PDF text. Let's see what that looks like. Ta-da! And then here's the book. And the cool thing is because it's electronic, I can just choose, I can look through the indexes and I can choose parts that are the most specific to my research. So I can just get to reading that, right? You as a researcher, you can be choosy about what you read in your books and things like that. So yeah, a lot of really awesome ebooks out there with a lot of useful info. Again, don't feel like you have to read a book from start to finish. If it's really useful, really interesting to you, by all means, go for it if you want to. But feel free to choose the parts of the book that are most relevant to your research as well. So that's an example. And again, say I like this ebook, I want to reference it later. What am I going to do? Bam, let me hit that add to my favorites. So I can just go to Harper Library, log in to the catalog and just find my stuff again, right? That's an example of an academic article, and that's an example of an ebook through OneSearch Library. Awesome. What's an example of a database search? Let's find out. I'm going to go back to Harper Library, and I'm going to go, let me just close some tabs here. See a few tabs hidden behind the WebEx bar, so I will just leave those be. But we're going to go back to the database tabs, and there are a number of databases you can try and things like that. Again, if you're not sure where to try, subject tag, ask your professor, ask your librarians, hey, I'm remote. How do I ask the librarians on what to research? We have this lovely Ask a Librarian menu right here, right? So even if you're not on campus proper, we're still reachable. That's exactly what we're here for. And I will be emailing Isaac a list of just general databases for you guys to try, and I'll also be showing that list in this PowerPoint here. So we'll see them soon. But for example, let's try. Let's see. I want to do like an argumentative paper. I'm going to try under I. Let's do issues and controversies. Very interesting database. So then I'm going to search that. Let's try a general search just because. Let's see what happens. A lot of researching is just experimentation. So I'm going to think more generally, and I'm going to research climate change, see what happens. I have 267 results here. Look at the search results. So just like how one search has tweaked your results, each database has their own set of tools that can hopefully help you fine tune the results. So here I have articles, neat. Primary sources, court cases. That's interesting. Let me click on that. Media, infographics, awesome. Stuff that you might not have think of that is useful. Here, filter by type, I see to the right. Pro-con articles, interesting. By the numbers, so that's more stats, right? Encyclopedia, things like that. Very cool. And again, I can just follow my researcher nose and see what titles are useful to me. Okay, neat. So again, I want to research, why do people deny climate change? I'm curious about that. So let's add another keyword, denial, there. Climate change, should the U.S. take aggressive steps to combat climate change? Cap and trade programs. And let's see. Let's try to hit pro and con articles. Let's see. Social media health, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, this is a case where this is one of 6 results. Let's look at primary sources. So I'm looking at primary sources, natural disaster response, open letter from scientists regarding climate change. That sounds kind of interesting. Primary sources and documents. So yeah, there's no, again, there's no perfect search out there, right? And depending on how you go about it, you're going to find a little bit of everything. So a database is going to show different results depending on, that might be different than what just comes in a result of a one search, right? Again, one search is one way to search, not the way to search. Let's try just to show how different databases look. Academic search complete. That's hosted on a database called EBSCO. We can see this is EBSCO host. This says academic search complete. EBSCO hosts, I'll give you a little librarian clue right here. EBSCO hosts a number of subject databases. If you want to search multiple EBSCO host databases at once, you can actually click so right now it says searching academic search complete. If I click that, here are all the databases that EBSCO is connected with, and I can just choose all of them if I wanted to, right? So fun little thing. I'm going to just, for example, search academic search complete, but feel free to click on the searching and then whatever database whatever EBSCO database you happen to be searching, and feel free to pick any other databases that might be useful to you, right? You can even hit a select all here, right? So then let me do climate change. Oh, this is useful. So here's a database that wants to help me with my keyword search. I typed climate change and it's giving me examples like, oh, do you want this? Do you want this? And that could give you an idea of how to narrow down your research too, right? So let's see. I don't see my specific, oh, here we go. Climate change denial or skepticism. Oh, I didn't think about that keyword. Then this is a good word. This is a good example. There's always a different way to say your research topic than just the first way you thought about it, right? And so I just learned a new keyword, skepticism. If I were to go back to one search and search climate change skepticism, I might get different results that are equally as useful. Awesome, right? So climate change denial politicians. Okay, yeah, it's my suspicions is that it's a politically fueled thought process, right? So then that's just an example. Let's try skepticism. Does that seem, that's an interesting synonym, right? And there we go. And here we have other things notifying us about it. It's from an academic journal. It's peer reviewed, right? Here are subjects related to it. Again, reading the subject tags of articles and stuff helps you learn terminology and vocabulary that they're using for the subject, which can give you what? New keywords for new searches. That could give you what? New results that could be useful to you, right? So researching is just kind of once you kind of get in the habit of just trying different searches, it should be a self-feeding resource of endless options for you as the researcher to hopefully find really useful knowledge and research from, right? So let's see. The social anatomy of climate change now in the United States. Seems interesting. Access options. So here I can download it. Look, there's little tools in the corner, just like in OneSearch, right? I can save it. I can cite it. I can add to project. I can share it. I can download it to access it offline. Very cool. So both the OneSearch catalog and the databases themselves have a lot of tools to help you find stuff and reference it and make it easy to access later, right? Woohoo! So thank you for joining me on that journey. That was a very quick peek into doing a OneSearch example and trying a few databases and see how their layouts work, right? Well-rounded research never comes from one place alone. So your goal is to try both and see what you find, right? Use both for better research, as I say. So possible databases and places to explore through Harper Library. OneSearch, of course, use the left filters though, right? Academic Search Complete, QR Research, Issues and Contrary, Gale and Context Opposing Viewpoints, JSTOR, and more. These are just example databases. If you're really not sure where to start and you're like, I just want general subject databases, help me out. Here are just a few more examples, but there's more databases to choose from than these, of course. This is just a good starting point, right? So again, you guys are the researchers. Follow your research notes, follow your curiosities, and that's going to lead you to interesting academic sources, right? And so library databases and searching strategies, these are the key points I want you guys to walk away with. Plan ahead. I hope that you see from that, this is not just a 1, 2, 3 and done, right? Every step of the research process takes time, right? No human brain, as brilliant as you all are, is meant to decide a topic, search that topic, find sources on that topic, read those sources on that topic, and then immediately write about that topic themselves. You should not do all those steps in one fell swoop, right? You need what I call breather room or elbow space between those steps to let your brain think about those processes, right? Researching takes time, right? There's no exact way to search databases. It's an organic process, and that's to your advantage, right? Because if you do a search and you're like, wow, that really didn't work out, that's okay. You can try different ways. You can try a different database. You can try different keyword searches. You have options, right? Never feel like, oh no, I'm doing this wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You just need to approach it a different way. No problemo. But ultimately you must try different approaches. Plan your keywords. If you are talking to a machine and what results are tagged may not be the first term you think of, try synonyms. There's always a different way to say your initial keywords, right? What are those? Try multiple searches. And everything will not appear in one search. Again, this is just trying different places, different database subjects and things like that. Filters, filters, filters. So you could see from the OneSearch and you could see from the databases, there were ways to filter articles, primary sources, et cetera, et cetera. Get curious on what options the databases give you and use those to make a more relevant pool of results for you. And use those database tools to also save your stuff. I never want you guys to go through the effort of finding stuff and then having difficulty getting back to it. So use those permalinks, use those email options. And then of course, we're gonna get into those citation button right there and how you can use that to double check MLA citations and make that process easier for you. And ultimately, you guys are in school, you are learning, you don't have to be pros at this right away, right? If you still feel stuck, that's totally okay. You have people to help you, your professor and us librarian team are always here to help you at any point of the research process. Don't feel like you have to be perfect at it right away, right?